Hey everyone, it's Emma. So, you will not believe what happened to me today. I completely forgot my phone at home. I know, right? It sounds crazy in this day and age, but it happened. Honestly, it felt so weird, like I was missing a limb or something. I'm so used to having it glued to my hand, you know? Checking messages, scrolling through, the usual. But today, nothing. Just me and the world. At first, it was a bit unsettling, like a low-key panic set in. Where's my phone? Oh no, it's at home. But then, as the day went on, something really interesting happened. It was almost liberating. It felt oddly peaceful not having that constant buzz and notification stream. I actually noticed things around me more, the sunshine, the birds singing. It was kind of magical. I want to share the whole experience with you, because it really made me think. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. And don't forget, there are new videos released daily focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, you won't believe what happened to me the other night. It all started with this, well, yearning, I guess? You know that feeling, right? Like you just need a dose of something artistic? I'd been staring at spreadsheets all week, and my brain felt like dried up Play-Doh. So, I decided, spur of the moment, to check out this little local theater. The Grand Majestic. It sounds fancy, doesn't it? It's really not. More like, charmingly dilapidated. Now, I haven't been to live theater in ages. Movies, sure. Netflix binges, definitely. But actual, live, breathing theater? Not since, well, high school, probably. And even then, it was forced viewing of Shakespeare, which, let's be honest, is a whole different kettle of fish. Anyway, I hop online, and they're doing this play, The Curious Case of the Clockwork Cat. Intriguing, no? I mean, cats and clockwork? Sold. Snagged the ticket, last row, far left. Classic introvert move, and practically skipped to the theater. It's a chilly autumn evening, leaves crunching under my feet, the air smelling like wood smoke and something faintly sweet, like caramel apples. I love that smell. It reminds me of bonfires and cozy sweaters. The Grand Majestic is tucked away on this quiet little street, bathed in the warm glow of these old-fashioned street lamps. It honestly looked like something out of a movie, one of those quirky indie films about finding yourself in unexpected places. I step inside, and, whoa. Time warp. The lobby is all red velvet and faded gold, like a glamorous old lady who's seen better days. The air is thick with the scent of dust and something almost theatrical? Is that a thing? A theatrical smell? Like old costumes and anticipation. There are these little framed playbills everywhere, showcasing decades of performances. I'm talking, like, Arsenic and Old Lace, from 1952. Seriously, I get my ticket ripped, by an actual human, not a scanner. And head inside. The theater itself is intimate, let's say. Tiny, really. Like, I'm pretty sure my living room is bigger. The seats are, well, they've definitely seen better days. Mine creaked ominously every time I shifted. But you know what? It added to the charm. It felt real, authentic. The audience was a real mix. Little old ladies clutching their purses, young couples holding hands, a group of teenagers looking decidedly bored, and me, perched in the back row, clutching my overpriced popcorn. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. That electric feeling, you know? The one you only get right before the curtain goes up. And then, it began. Now, I'm not going to give you a full play-by-play, because, spoilers. But let me tell you, this play was something else. It was about a cat, obviously, a mechanical cat, built by this eccentric inventor. But it was also about loss, and love, and the search for meaning in a world that doesn't always make sense. Deep stuff, disguised as a quirky comedy. The actors, bless their hearts, were clearly passionate. I mean, this wasn't Broadway, but they were giving it their all. There were a few flubbed lines, a couple of awkward pauses, and one particularly dramatic scene where the cat's tail fell off. But you know what? It just made it more endearing. More human. There was this one moment, though, this one moment that just stuck with me. The inventor, he's talking to the clockwork cat, pouring his heart out, telling it all his hopes and dreams and fears. And the cat, this inanimate object, just sits there, silently listening. And in that moment, I felt this connection. This weird, unexpected surge of empathy, not just for the inventor, but for the cat, too. It was powerful. And then, guess what happened? The cat started to purr. I kid you not. This mechanical cat started to purr. Now, logically, I knew it was just a sound effect, cleverly timed. But in that moment, in the dim light of that tiny theater, surrounded by the creaking seats and the hushed breaths of the audience, it felt real. Like magic. The play ended with a standing ovation. A slightly creaky standing ovation. Mind you, given the state of the seats. And I walked out into the cool night air feeling lighter. Like something had shifted inside me. The spreadsheets, the deadlines, the everyday anxieties, they all felt a little less weighty. A little less real. I walked home slowly, kicking through the fallen leaves, the scent of caramel apples still lingering in the air. And I realized something. Sometimes, the most unexpected experiences, the ones that take you completely by surprise, are the ones that stay with you the longest. The ones that remind you of the magic that's still out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. You know, I went into that theater expecting a quirky little play about a clockwork cat. And I walked out with, well, I'm not sure exactly what I walked out with. But it was something good. Something real. And sometimes, that's all you need. A little dose of realness in a world that often feels, well, you know, a little too clockwork. So yeah, that was my night at the Grand Majestic. Who knew a slightly dilapidated theater and a mechanical cat could be so inspiring? What about you? Any unexpected adventures lately? I'd love to hear. Okay. So, you know how everyone has that one story about learning to drive? Well, mine's a bit of a saga. Buckle up, because it's a bumpy ride, literally. It all started, I guess, with this fierce yearning for freedom. I was 16, stuck in suburbia, and the world felt like this giant, tantalizing jigsaw puzzle. I couldn't quite piece together because I was missing the crucial piece, a driver's license. You know that feeling, right? That itch to just go, to explore beyond the confines of your parents' schedule? My dad, bless his heart, volunteered as tribute, instructor. Now, my dad is a wonderful man, truly, but patience isn't exactly his strong suit. He's more of a rip the band-aid off kind of guy, which, as you can imagine, isn't the ideal temperament for teaching a nervous teenager to navigate 2 tons of metal. Our first lesson took place in a deserted church parking lot on a blisteringly hot Sunday afternoon. The air shimmered with heat, the asphalt radiated it back up, and I could practically smell the melting tar. I remember the car, a battered old station wagon we affectionately nicknamed the Beast. It smelled of old vinyl and something faintly dog-like. I slid behind the wheel, my hands clammy, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The steering wheel felt enormous, the pedals alien. Dad started with the basics, bless him. This, he said, pointing to a confusing array of dials and knobs, is your dashboard. This is the gas. This is the brake. Don't confuse them. Sound advice, in theory. He had this little diagram he'd drawn, a masterpiece of stick figures and arrows, meant to illustrate the concept of turning. He'd spent, like, an hour on it the night before, I swear. It looked more like a treasure map to buried pirate gold than driving instructions. I nodded along, pretending to understand while secretly wondering if there was a hidden X marks the spot somewhere on the page. Okay, he said, his voice a bit strained, put the car in drive. I fumbled with the gear shift, accidentally knocking it into neutral. Oops. I mumbled, cheeks burning. Even the Beast seemed to sigh. Finally, I managed to get it into drive. My foot trembled above the gas pedal. Easy does it, Dad cautioned, his hand hovering over the imaginary passenger side brake pedal. I pressed down. Gently, or so I thought. The Beast lurched forward with a surprising roar, my stomach doing a somersault. We jerked to a stop, the car stalling with a shudder. Easy, Dad repeated, his voice a tad higher pitched this time. We spent the next hour lurching and stalling, the air punctuated by Dad's increasingly frequent reminders to ease into it. I think I killed the engine. At least a dozen times. The church parking lot, once a symbol of peace and serenity, became my personal arena of automotive humiliation. The following lessons weren't much better. There was the time I mistook the gas pedal for the brake and nearly took out a mailbox. The mailbox survived. My pride? Not so much. Then there was the incident involving a rogue shopping cart. And a very confused pedestrian. Let's just say I wasn't exactly winning any awards for smooth driving. But amidst the near misses and the stalled engines, something started to shift. Slowly, tentatively, I began to get the hang of it. The lurching became less violent, the stalling less frequent. I started to understand the delicate dance between the gas and the brake, the subtle turn of the wheel. One crisp autumn evening, Dad decided I was ready for the open road. The air was cool and crisp, the leaves a riot of gold and crimson. We drove out to this quiet country road, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. There were no mailboxes, no shopping carts, no bewildered pedestrians. Just miles of open road stretching ahead. And you know what? I drove. I actually drove. No lurching, no stalling, no near misses. The Beast, for once, purred contentedly beneath me. The wind whipped through my hair, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I felt this incredible sense of liberation, of pure, unadulterated joy. It was like the world had finally opened up to me, the missing piece of the puzzle finally clicking into place. We drove for miles, just Dad and me. The silence broken only by the hum of the engine and the rustling of leaves. I can't remember what we talked about, if anything at all. But I remember the feeling, that sense of accomplishment, of freedom, of connection. It wasn't just about learning to drive a car. It was about learning to navigate the world, to take control of my own journey. Of course, there were still a few bumps along the way. Like the time I accidentally drove through a puddle deep enough to soak a small elephant, or the time I got my first parking ticket. Seriously, who knew parallel parking was an Olympic sport? But those were just minor detours on the road to driving independence. Looking back now, I realize that learning to drive wasn't just about mastering a skill. It was about facing my fears, overcoming challenges, and discovering a newfound sense of self-reliance. And it was about sharing a unique, sometimes terrifying, often hilarious, and ultimately rewarding experience with my dad. So, yeah, it's a bit of a saga, my driving story. But it's my saga, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. You know what I mean? It's one of those things you look back on and think, wow, I actually did that. And it all started in a dusty church parking lot, with a battered old station wagon, and a dad who, despite his lack of patience, taught me how to take the wheel and steer my own course. And honestly, I think that's pretty cool. Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But remember, every step you take, every word you learn, brings you closer to the peak. Make your today better, so you can be proud of your tomorrow. Think about it. Each time you practice, you're building a stronger, more confident you for the future. Every conversation, every attempt, is a brick in the foundation of your fluency. So keep going, because the view from the top is incredible. And you know what? It doesn't have to be all textbooks and grammar rules. There are so many fun ways to practice. One of my favorites is watching movies and repeating lines. Seriously, it's like having a personal acting coach right there in your living room. You can even do it while cooking dinner or taking a walk. Just pick a scene you love, listen to the actors, and try to mimic their pronunciation and intonation. Honestly, it feels like magic how quickly you start absorbing new phrases and expressions. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? It's something I've definitely experienced, especially when it comes to handling phone calls professionally. That ringing phone can suddenly feel like a huge pressure. From ordering food to talking to colleagues, these calls can be nerve-wracking. But they are also golden opportunities to practice real-life conversations. Speaking of overcoming those hesitant moments, I remember once, I had to call a client in English, and my heart was pounding. You will not believe what happened next. I took a deep breath, reminded myself of all the practice I'd done, and the call went smoothly. It made me realize how powerful overcoming that initial hurdle can be. So tell me, how do you overcome hesitation while speaking? I'd love to hear your tips and tricks in the comments below. Okay, so, grab a cup of something warm, settle in, because I have a story to tell you about hiking. Not just any hiking story, mind you. This one's special. It's about how the mountains, quite literally, changed my perspective. See, I was never really an outdoorsy person. Give me a good book, a cozy blanket, and the sound of rain, and I'm happy. Nature? Sure, it was pretty from a distance. But the idea of actually being in it, sweating, dealing with bugs, shudders. Not my cup of tea. But then, my friend, Sarah, this absolute whirlwind of energy, decided we needed a digital detox. A what, you ask? Yeah, apparently spending all my time scrolling through Instagram qualified as being toxic. Who knew? Anyway, her detox involved dragging me up a mountain. A mountain. The mountain in question was Mount Monadnock, in New Hampshire. Now, I'd seen pictures, and it looked imposing. Like a giant, green, grumpy lump in the landscape. Sarah, on the other hand, was ecstatic. She had her hiking boots, her fancy backpack, her protein bars, the whole shebang. Me? I had a pair of slightly worn sneakers and a vague sense of impending doom. The first hour or so was, well, let's just say it was a learning experience. I discovered that trail mix is not, in fact, a party snack, and that rocks are surprisingly slippery. I also learned that I am dramatically unfit. Like, hilariously so. Sarah, bless her soul, was practically bouncing up the trail while I huffed and puffed behind her, feeling like my lungs were going to stage a walkout. The sounds of the forest were interesting. At first, it was all overwhelming chirping birds, rustling leaves, the crunch of gravel underfoot. But slowly, as I forced myself to focus, it started to become soothing. The chirping wasn't just noise, it was a conversation. The rustling wasn't just leaves, it was the wind whispering secrets. You know what I mean? Like the forest was alive and breathing around me. And the smells. Oh, the smells. That fresh, earthy scent of damp soil. The sharp tang of pine needles. The sweet fragrance of wildflowers. It was like aromatherapy on steroids. I'd never realized how much the city had dulled my senses. But the climb. Oh, the climb. It was relentless. There were moments, I'm not ashamed to admit, where I wanted to just sit down and cry. My legs burned, my back ached, and my pride was taking a serious beating. But Sarah kept encouraging me, reminding me to take breaks, to drink water, to look around and appreciate the view. And the view, wow. As we climbed higher, the trees began to thin out, and glimpses of the world below started to peek through. Rolling hills, dotted with farmhouses and shimmering lakes, stretched out as far as the eye could see. It was breathtaking, like looking at a painting, but 1,000 times more vibrant and real. We stopped for lunch on a rocky outcrop, perched high above the world. Sarah pulled out her gourmet sandwiches. She even had little pickles, while I munched on my slightly squashed banana. We didn't talk much, just sat there, soaking in the silence and the incredible panorama. It was in that moment, surrounded by the vastness of nature, that something shifted inside me. The worries and anxieties that usually cluttered my mind, deadlines, bills, social media drama, seemed to fade away, replaced by a sense of peace and wonder. I felt small, yes, but not in a bad way. Small in a way that made me feel connected to something bigger than myself. It was like the mountain was whispering, see? There's more to life than what you see on your phone screen. The descent was, well, let's just say it was less dramatic than the ascent, but still challenging. My knees complained with every step, and I tripped over more rocks than I care to admit. But I didn't mind. I was buzzing with a strange new energy, a sense of accomplishment and, dare I say it, joy. When we finally reached the bottom, I was exhausted, sore, and covered in dirt. But I felt alive. Truly, deeply alive. I had faced a challenge, pushed myself beyond my limits, and discovered a beauty I never knew existed. Guess what happened next? I went hiking again. And again. And again. It wasn't an overnight transformation, mind you. There were still moments of struggle. Moments where I questioned my sanity for voluntarily subjecting myself to such physical exertion. But each time I reached a summit, each time I felt the wind in my hair and the sun on my face, I was reminded of that first climb up Mount Monadnock, the climb that changed everything. Now, I'm not saying I've become some kind of hardcore mountaineer. I still appreciate a good book and a cozy blanket. But I've learned that there's magic to be found outside of my comfort zone. Magic in the rustling leaves and the chirping birds. Magic in the vastness of the mountains and the silence of the woods. And that's a magic I wouldn't trade for anything. So, yeah, hiking. It's more than just walking up a hill. It's a journey, both inward and outward. It's a reminder that there's a whole world out there, waiting to be explored. And that sometimes, the best way to find yourself is to get a little lost. You know what I mean? Okay. So, picture this. It was a Tuesday, I think. Or maybe a Wednesday? See? Already my memory's fuzzy. Anyway, it was one of those days, you know? The kind where you wake up and the air just feels heavy. Like the universe itself is sighing. And my trusty tote bag, the one I practically live out of, well, it decided to join the universe in its melancholic mood. I noticed it when I was grabbing my keys. A long, jagged tear, right at the bottom seam. My heart sank. This wasn't just any bag. This bag had history. It had been with me through thick and thin, from farmers' markets overflowing with ripe peaches to crowded subway rides where it served as my shield against the world. It carried my hopes and dreams, literally, in the form of notebooks filled with scribbled stories and half-baked ideas. It was a beautiful bag, too. Deep, rich indigo canvas, hand-stitched with these intricate floral embroideries. I got it from a little artisan shop tucked away in a cobbled alleyway during a trip to Prague. I remember the smell of freshly baked bread wafting from a nearby bakery, the sound of a street musician playing a melancholic tune on his accordion. Gosh, that trip feels like a lifetime ago. Anyway, the bag was a souvenir, a reminder of that magical time, and now, it was ripped. My first reaction? Despair, of course. A dramatic sigh, a little head shake. I almost tossed it in the to be donated pile. Almost. But then, something stopped me. It was more than just a bag, right? It was a friend, a companion. And you don't just abandon your friends when they get a little damaged. So, I decided I was going to fix it. Now, I'm not exactly what you'd call handy. My sewing skills are, shall we say, rudimentary at best. My last attempt at sewing involved a button and resulted in a rather interesting, asymmetrical situation. But this felt different. This was a mission. I rummaged through my drawers, pulling out a tangled mess of thread, needles, and, well, mostly just thread and needles. I found this little sewing kit my grandma had given me years ago. It was one of those cute vintage ones, with a floral print and tiny, ridiculously sharp scissors. I remember watching her mend clothes with such effortless grace, her fingers flying across the fabric. I wished, just for a moment, that some of her skill had magically transferred to me through the kit. I spread the bag out on my kitchen table, the tear gaping up at me like a sad little mouth. Where do I even begin? I pulled out a spool of navy thread, hoping it was close enough to the original indigo. It wasn't, not really. But it was the closest I had. The first stitch was wobbly. Let's just leave it at that. The second one was slightly less wobbly. Progress. I squinted, my tongue sticking out the corner of my mouth in concentration. The needle felt awkward in my hand, like a stranger. My stitches were uneven, some too tight, some too loose. It looked like a 5-year-old had attacked my bag with a needle and thread. I sighed. This wasn't working. I was about to give up, toss the whole thing in the trash, and order a new bag online. Probably a dozen new bags, let's be honest. But then, I remembered something my grandma used to say. Patience, my dear. Even the smallest stitch can hold a story together. So, I took a deep breath, grabbed a cup of tea, chamomile, with a splash of honey, and tried again. This time, I focused on each stitch, pulling the thread gently, trying to mimic the even, precise movements I remembered my grandma making. Slowly, painstakingly slowly, the tear began to close. It wasn't pretty, not by a long shot. The stitches were still a bit unique. And the navy thread stood out against the indigo like a bold, slightly misplaced declaration. But it was holding. The bag was whole again. I sat back, admiring my handiwork. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And in that imperfection, there was a strange kind of beauty. It told a story of a slightly clumsy, not so handy girl who refused to give up on a beloved bag. It was a story of patience, of perseverance, and of the quiet satisfaction of mending something broken. And you know what? It held. I used that bag for years after that. Every time I saw those wonky stitches, I'd smile. They were a reminder that even the most imperfect repairs can be beautiful, that things don't have to be perfect to be loved, and that sometimes, the most valuable things are the ones we take the time to fix ourselves. The bag eventually did wear out, you know, just from general use. But I kept those wonky stitches. I cut out a small square of fabric around the mended area and framed it. It sits on my desk now, a little reminder of that heavy Tuesday. Or was it Wednesday? A reminder of my grandma, and a reminder that even a torn bag can teach you a thing or two about life. Funny, isn't it? The things we hold onto, the stories we carry with us. Sometimes, they're hidden in the most unexpected places. Like a wonky stitch on a well-loved bag. Hey everyone, learning a new language can seem daunting at first, but you know what? The real fun of learning begins when you step out of your comfort zone. Think about it. It's like taking that first leap into a cool swimming pool on a hot day. It might be a little nerve-wracking at first, but the feeling of freedom and accomplishment you get afterward is incredible. Stepping outside your comfort zone is where the real growth, the real joy of connecting, begins. You've already started on this journey, and that's a huge step. And guess what? There's a super fun and easy way to boost your English speaking skills. Trying tongue twisters. Honestly, it feels like a game, and it can brighten up even the most ordinary moments. Imagine yourself cooking dinner, and suddenly you're saying, "She sells seashells by the seashore," out loud. Or picture yourself walking in the park, practicing, "Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers." It's not just fun, It also helps with pronunciation and fluency. Give it a try. You might be surprised at how much you enjoy it. Explaining your problems clearly can be tough, especially in a different language. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? It's completely normal. Sometimes you know exactly what you want to say in your mind, but finding the right words feels like searching for a missing sock. We've all been there, but remember, every time you try, you're getting closer to expressing yourself confidently. You will not believe what happened the other day. I was talking to a friend, and they used the idiom, raining cats and dogs, and it just made me smile. It got me thinking, which English idiom do you love? Is there one that you find particularly interesting or funny? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear. Okay, so, picture this. It's a Sunday. Not just any Sunday, mind you. One of those Sundays where the sun is streaming in, the dust motes are doing their little dance in the golden rays, and you should be productive. Should being the operative word here. You know what I mean? That kind of Sunday where you tell yourself, today, I'm going to conquer the world, and end up conquering the couch. Yep, that was me. Except, this particular Sunday, something shifted. I was buried under a mountain of to-do lists. Scribbled on napkins, the backs of receipts, even a stray banana peel once. It was chaos. Utter, beautiful, chaotic chaos. My life felt like a runaway train fueled by procrastination and strong coffee. I'd double book myself, miss deadlines, and generally operate in a constant state of mild panic. Sound familiar? I bet it does. We've all been there, right? Anyway, I'm sitting there, amidst the crumpled paper blizzard, sipping my lukewarm coffee, when I spot it. A pristine, untouched calendar. A beautiful, blank slate. A beacon of hope in my messy, disorganized existence. It was tucked away in a drawer, a forgotten Christmas gift from my Aunt Mildred. Aunt Mildred, bless her heart, she's got a thing for organization. Color-coded sock drawers, alphabetized spice racks, you get the picture. I'd kind of chuckled when I received it, thinking, yeah, right, Aunt Mildred. Like that's going to happen. But in that moment, surrounded by the evidence of my scheduling sins, it felt different. So, I pull it out. It's this gorgeous deep blue, with thick, creamy pages and little gold accents. Almost too pretty to write in, you know? I ran my fingers over the smooth cover, inhaling that new calendar smell, a mix of paper and possibility. It was like holding a fresh start in my hands. And then, the intimidation set in. A blank calendar can be a daunting thing. All those empty boxes, staring back at you, silently judging your lack of plans. It's like a pristine snowfield just begging for footprints. Or, in my case, a chaotic scribble of appointments, deadlines, and social engagements. Where to even begin? I started small. Birthdays. The easy ones. Mom, Dad, the dog. Yes, the dog. He gets a birthday cupcake. Don't judge. Then came the appointments I already knew about. The dentist, the hair salon, desperately needed. Let me tell you, that oil change I'd been putting off for months. With each entry, a tiny bit of order emerged from the chaos. It was oddly satisfying. But then came the real challenge, scheduling my life. My actual life. You know, the writing deadlines, the gym sessions I swore I'd start, the social gatherings I perpetually flaked on. This is where things got interesting. First, I tried color coding. Work in red, social events in green, personal appointments in blue. Seemed like a good idea in theory. In practice, my calendar looked like a toddler had attacked it with a box of crayons. It was a vibrant mess. I stared at it, feeling a familiar wave of overwhelm washing over me. This wasn't working. Then I tried using stickers. Tiny, adorable stickers. Little coffee cups for coffee dates. Dumbbells for workouts. Pens for writing sessions. Cute, right? Except, I ran out of coffee cup stickers halfway through scheduling my week. And let me tell you, a dumbbell sticker doesn't quite capture the essence of finally cleaning the bathroom. So, scratch that idea. I crumpled up a few more napkins in frustration. This was harder than it looked. Was I really so incapable of organizing my own life? I glanced at the clock. Hours had passed. The sun, which had been so cheerful and encouraging earlier, was now starting to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across my living room. The dust motes, once dancing merrily, now seemed to mock my failure. And then, a realization. I was overthinking it. This wasn't about creating a perfect, Instagram-worthy schedule. It was about creating a system that worked for me. A system that helped me navigate the chaos, not add to it. So, I took a deep breath, grabbed a fresh pen, a nice, smooth gel pen, because, priorities, and started again. This time, simpler. No colors, no stickers, just clear, concise entries. And you know what? It worked. It actually worked. I mapped out my week, blocking off time for work, for exercise, realistic exercise, not the overly ambitious kind, for social events, and, most importantly, for downtime. Real, honest-to-goodness downtime. Time to read, to nap, to just be. It felt revolutionary. As I filled in the last box, a sense of calm washed over me. It wasn't perfect. There were still some blank spaces, some question marks, some TBDs scattered throughout. But it was a start. A real, tangible start. And then, something unexpected happened. I started to feel excited. Looking at my calendar, I didn't see a daunting list of obligations. I saw possibilities. I saw opportunities. I saw a framework for a more balanced, more intentional life. I even, dare I say it, started looking forward to Monday. Monday. The dreaded Monday. Suddenly, it didn't seem so dreadful anymore. It seemed manageable. Guess what happened next? I actually stuck to my schedule. Mostly. Okay. I might have skipped a gym session or two. In my defense, Netflix released a new season of my favorite show. But for the most part, I was showing up. I was meeting deadlines, making it to appointments, and even managing to squeeze in some quality time with friends and family. It wasn't magic. It was just a calendar. A simple, blue calendar with gold accents. But it had changed something. It had given me a sense of control, a sense of purpose, a sense of hope. So, yeah, that was the day I set up a new calendar. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that, my friend, made all the difference. You know what I mean? Sometimes, the smallest changes can have the biggest impact. Sometimes, all you need is a blank slate, a good pen, and a little bit of hope to start creating the life you want. A long, contented sigh escapes, followed by the clinking of a teaspoon against a ceramic mug. So, you want to hear a story? A real, proper story? Okay, grab a blanket, settle in, because this one takes place on a winter's day. A proper, bone-chilling winter's day, the kind that makes you want to burrow under a mountain of quilts and never, ever come out. You know the kind I'm talking about, right? The sky that pale, washed-out gray, like someone's forgotten to color it in. The air, so sharp it stings your lungs. It was one of those days. And honestly, I was feeling, well, a little lost. A little gray myself, mirroring that dreary sky. Things hadn't been easy. You know how life throws you curveballs sometimes? Well, I'd been playing catch-up for what felt like an eternity. Work was relentless, my tiny apartment felt more like a cage than a sanctuary, and the loneliness, well, the loneliness was a heavy blanket I couldn't seem to shake off. And then, I remembered the masala chai. My grandmother, oh, she was the queen of masala chai. Her kitchen, always warm, always fragrant, was my haven as a child. Whenever life felt a little too much, she'd pull me close, wrap me in her sari, and whisper, "A good cup of chai can fix anything, beta." And you know what? She was usually right. So, there I was, on this bleak winter's day, standing in my own tiny, decidedly unmagical kitchen, feeling like a small ship lost at sea. And suddenly, with a clarity that surprised even me, I knew exactly what I needed. I needed my grandmother's chai. Now, I'd watched her make it 1,000 times. The rhythmic clang of the mortar and pestle, the fragrant steam swirling up, the careful pour. I'd seen it all, but doing it myself? That was a different story altogether. I rummaged through my spice cupboard, a jumble of mismatched jars and half-empty containers. Ginger root, wrinkled and gnarled like an old gnome, cardamom pods whispering their secrets, cinnamon sticks brittle with age, cloves sharp and pungent, black peppercorns like tiny dark jewels. They were all there, waiting. It started with the ginger. Peeling it, the skin rough against my fingers, I remembered my grandmother's hands, strong and weathered, working the same root with effortless grace. I tried to mimic her movements, grating the ginger with a little more force than necessary, a bit of frustration seeping in. Why couldn't I make it look as easy as she did? Why did my ginger look like mangled threads while hers resembled delicate snowflakes? A sigh escaped my lips, a puff of white in the cold kitchen air. But then, I caught a whiff of the ginger's sharp, clean aroma. It was a familiar scent, a comforting scent, and a small smile touched my lips. Okay, I whispered to myself, we're getting somewhere. Next came the cardamom pods. I crushed them, not with a graceful mortar and pestle like my grandmother, but with the bottom of a heavy mug. It wasn't pretty, but it did the job. The aroma, sweet and floral, mingled with the ginger, and suddenly, my tiny kitchen felt a little less lonely. The water, bubbling away in a battered saucepan, mirrored the turmoil inside me. I added the spices, the milk, a pinch of black tea, and then, I waited. The minutes ticked by, slow and heavy, each one an echo of the emptiness I'd been feeling. I stared out the window at the gray sky, the bare branches of the trees reaching up like skeletal fingers. And then, it happened. The aroma. It filled the kitchen, warm and inviting. A fragrant hug on a cold day. It wasn't just the smell of spices, it was the smell of memories, of comfort, of love. It was the smell of my grandmother's kitchen. I strained the chai into my favorite mug, a chipped ceramic one I'd had for years. The rich, amber liquid steamed, a swirl of fragrant promises rising to greet me. I took a sip, the warmth spreading through me, chasing away the chill. It wasn't perfect. It was a little too strong, a little too sweet, not quite like my grandmother's. But it was close. So very close. And you know what? In that moment, as I sat there, wrapped in a blanket, sipping my imperfect chai, the world felt a little less gray. The silence wasn't as deafening, the loneliness not as heavy. It wasn't a magical fix-all, not a complete erasure of all that was wrong. But it was a start. A small, warm, fragrant start. Making that chai, it wasn't just about the drink itself, you know? It was about the ritual. The act of creating something warm and comforting. Something that connected me to my past, to my grandmother, to a part of myself I'd almost forgotten. It was about taking a moment, a small pause in the chaos of life, to breathe, to remember, to nourish not just my body, but my soul. It made me realize that sometimes, healing isn't about grand gestures or dramatic changes. Sometimes, it's about the small things. The simple acts of self-care, the quiet moments of reflection, the warm cup of chai on a winter's day. So, here's to the imperfect chai, the chipped mugs, the messy kitchens, and the memories that warm us from the inside out. Because sometimes, that's all we need. Just a little bit of warmth, a little bit of spice, and a whole lot of love. And you know what? Sometimes, that's more than enough. More than enough. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching and for spending this time with me. I really appreciate you staying connected and sharing this moment. If you'd like to keep up with our daily English speaking and listening practice, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, and share. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, are you planning to meet someone special soon? It is always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans is a wonderful way to practice expressing yourself in English and connecting with others. See you tomorrow. And remember to take care of yourselves and keep practicing. Your consistency is key.